Well, you can't dispute that she's doing what Trump nominated her for, which is essentially to create a private law firm with the Department of Justice in order to support Donald Trump and the philosophies that he wants to spread across the country. I think that if she hadn't politicized the Department of Justice as she has, and if she hadn't made the decision, the personal decision and the professional decision to essentially do whatever Donald Trump wanted her to do, become an agent of Donald Trump, she may very well have been qualified because she was the Attorney General of Florida. But her fealty to Donald Trump didn't begin just with her representing him personally in the first impeachment proceeding. I think it began in 2013 when she was the Attorney General in Florida. I don't know if people remember this, but there was a scandal related to it. Pam Bondi was received from a Trump Foundation donation to a PAC that was connected to Pam Bondi that would have supported her 2014 election bid to become AG again. $25,000. Trump essentially donated to $25,000 to Pam Bondi. And then very shortly after that, about a month later, the Attorney General of Florida, Pam Bondi, made the decision not to proceed with an investigation against Donald Trump for fraud for the Trump University scandal that a lot of different states proceeded against him.
Okay, so here's what's going on right now. And honestly, this is absolutely insane. The Justice Department is basically falling apart from the inside and everybody's pointing fingers at one person. Pam Bondi? Yeah, Trump's Attorney General. And look, I know you've probably heard bits and pieces of this story, but trust me when I say the full picture is way worse than what you're seeing on your timeline. So let me paint you a picture here. You've got the most powerful law enforcement agency in the entire country, right? The Department of Justice, and it's supposed to be independent. It's supposed to uphold the law without playing favorites. That's like the whole point of having a Justice Department in the first place. But right now, there are whispers coming out of that building that would make your head spin. Career prosecutors are furious. Federal judges are publicly calling out the DOJ for misleading them and ignoring court rulings. And at the center of all this chaos sits Pam Bondi, who's basically accused of turning the Justice Department into Trump's personal revenge machine. And get this isn't just some inside baseball political drama that only nerds care about. This is affecting real investigations, real indictments, and real people's lives. We're talking about whether the justice system in America actually works anymore, or if it's just become another tool for whoever's in power to go after their enemies. Like, that's a pretty big deal. Yeah, but before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. Now, here's where it gets really wild. On September 20th, Trump accidentally, and I mean accidentally, posted a private message to Pam Bondi on Truth Social. Not in a DM, not in a text. He posted it publicly to his 10.8 million followers. Can you believe this? The message was him basically ordering her to speed up indictments against his political opponents, and he's yelling in all caps, "Justice must be served now." Like, this is supposed to be a private conversation between the president and his attorney general about ongoing criminal investigations, and he just blasted out to the entire internet. And look, I know Trump's not exactly famous for his social media discipline. Okay, we all remember the typos and the midnight rant tweets, but this is different. This isn't him misspelling coffee or making up a word. This is him accidentally revealing that he's directly pressuring the attorney general to go after specific people. That's not how this is supposed to work at all. The president isn't supposed to be calling up the AG and saying, hey, indict this person faster. That's literally what we call weaponizing the Justice Department.
A social media post from President Trump is making news today. He posted a message pressing the Attorney General Pam Bondi to indict several of his political rivals. An administration official confirmed to NBC News that Trump thought he'd sent the message directly to Bondi. He was surprised to learn he had actually posted the message on Truth Social. Since the post was made, 2 of the 3 people mentioned by name in the post have been indicted: former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James.
But wait, because it gets even messier. Fast forward to October 23rd, and Bondi's getting grilled about a grand jury investigation into Senator Adam Schiff, you know, the guy who led Trump's first impeachment. And when reporters ask her about it, she basically shuts them down, saying we are not going to discuss any ongoing grand jury matters, and we cannot legally do so. Which, okay, fine, that's technically the right answer, but come on, everybody knows what's happening here. Trump's been obsessed with Schiff for years. He's called him every name in the book, and now there just happens to be a grand jury looking into him right after Trump accidentally reveals he's pushing Bondi to indict people. The timing here is not subtle. It's not even trying to be subtle. And the problem is, half the country sees this and thinks, yeah, finally someone's holding these corrupt politicians accountable. And the other half sees this and thinks we're watching the rule of law collapse in real time. There's a new poll from Yahoo News that came out literally today, October 27th, showing Americans are split right down the middle. Half think the DOJ is Trump's revenge operation. Half think it's justice finally being served. That's where we are as a country right now. We can't even agree on whether our Justice Department is legitimate anymore. And here's the thing that really gets me. Federal judges, not partisan commentators, not political activists, but actual federal judges, are publicly saying that Bondi's DOJ is eroding trust by flouting court rulings and misleading tribunals. That came out in Newsweek on October 20th. When judges start saying that the Justice Department is lying to them and ignoring their orders, that's not a small problem. That's a 5-alarm fire. That's the foundation of the legal system starting to crack. So yeah, we need to talk about this. We need to break down what's actually happening inside the Justice Department, why Pam Bondi's caught in the middle of all this, and what it means for literally everything going forward. Because this isn't just drama. This is about whether we have a functioning justice system or whether we've crossed some line we can't come back from. And honestly, after you hear the full story, you're going to be pretty shocked at how bad this really is. Like, we're talking about the potential collapse of one of the most important institutions in American democracy, and nobody seems to be taking it seriously enough. So buckle up, because this is going to be a ride. All right, so let's dig into this, because there's a lot more going on beneath the surface, and most people are missing the bigger picture here. Like, yeah, the Trump Truth Social accident is embarrassing, and yeah, it looks bad, but that's actually just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what's happening at the Justice Department right now. First, let's talk about who Pam Bondi actually is, because context matters here. She was Florida's Attorney General for 8 years. She's been in Trump's orbit for a long time. She was part of his legal defense team during his first impeachment. So when Trump nominated her to be Attorney General, everybody knew she was loyal to him. That was kind of the point. But there's a difference between being loyal and being a puppet, right? And the question everybody's asking now is, which one is Pam Bondi? Because here's what we're seeing. Ever since she took over the DOJ, there's been this pattern of investigations that just happen to align perfectly with Trump's enemies list. I mean, we've got grand juries looking into Adam Schiff, who impeached Trump. We've got renewed scrutiny on people who testified against Trump in various investigations. We've got prosecutors who worked on Trump's cases suddenly finding themselves under internal review. And look, maybe that's all coincidence. Maybe these are all legitimate investigations that just happen to involve people Trump hates. But come on, at what point do we stop pretending this is normal? And the leaks coming out of the Justice Department paint a pretty disturbing picture. Career prosecutors, people who've been there for decades through both Republican and Democratic administrations, they're saying the place is in chaos. They're saying political appointees are overruling prosecutorial decisions. They're saying cases are being fast-tracked or slow-walked based on political considerations. One prosecutor told reporters, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the department has become unrecognizable, that they've never seen this level of political interference in their entire career. Now Trump and his supporters would say, hold on a second, the Justice Department was already politicized. It was weaponized against Trump for years. Remember the Russia investigation? Mar-a-Lago? Remember all the prosecutors going after Trump in New York and Georgia and D.C.? So from their perspective, this is just leveling the playing field. This is finally using the DOJ to go after actual corruption instead of made-up charges against Trump. And look, I get that argument. I really do. If you think Trump was unfairly persecuted, then yeah, you probably think turnabout is fair play. But here's the problem with that logic. Two wrongs don't make a right. If the Justice Department was politicized before, and we all agree that was bad, then making it more politicized now doesn't fix anything. It just makes everything worse. It sets a precedent that whoever controls the White House gets to use the DOJ as their personal attack dog. And once you go down that road, there's no coming back. Because the next president is going to do the same thing, and the one after that. And eventually, you don't have a Justice Department anymore. You just have a political weapon that changes hands every 4 to 8 years. And this is where Pam Bondi's position becomes so complicated. Because on the one hand, she's supposed to be independent. The Attorney General isn't supposed to take orders from the president. There's supposed to be this wall between the White House and the DOJ to prevent exactly this kind of situation. But on the other hand, she serves at the pleasure of the president. Trump can fire her whenever he wants. So what's she supposed to do when the president of the United States accidentally posts a public message ordering her to indict people faster? Does she ignore him and risk getting fired? Does she follow orders and become part of the problem? There's no good answer here. And let's talk about that Truth Social post again, because it really is the smoking gun that proves what everybody already suspected. The message said justice must be served,
Donald Trump is calling out his own Attorney General, Pam Bondi, for a lack of legal action by the DOJ in prosecuting his own perceived enemies. He posted just last hour, quote, "Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old story as last time, all talk, no action, nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia, question mark, question mark, question mark? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility."
Now in all caps. Now Trump's people tried to spin this afterwards saying, oh, he was just expressing frustration with the slow pace of the justice system in general. He wasn't talking about specific people, but like, come on. We all know what he meant. He meant indict my enemies and do it faster. That's what justice must be served now means in Trump speak. He's been saying the same thing about Democrats and corrupt politicians for years. He's not subtle about who he thinks should be in jail. And the fact that this was supposed to be a private message makes it so much worse, because it means this is how Trump actually talks to his attorney general behind closed doors. This is the kind of pressure he's putting on her when the cameras are off. And if he's willing to say this stuff in what he thought was a private conversation, imagine what he's saying in the Oval Office. Imagine what demands he's making when there's no record and no witnesses. But here's what really bothers me about all this. The allegations about Trump's family. The document mentions accusations that Bondi is protecting Trump's family from indictments. Now, we don't have all the details on this yet because obviously nobody's going to confirm or deny active investigations. But think about what that would mean if it's true. It would mean that while the DOJ is allegedly going after Trump's political enemies, it's simultaneously giving his family members a pass on potential criminal charges. That would be corruption at the absolute highest level. That would be using the Justice Department not just to punish your enemies, but to protect your friends and family. And this ties into a much longer pattern with Trump, right? Remember when he was president the first time, and there were all these questions about conflicts of interest, about his businesses, about his kids working in the White House, about foreign governments potentially trying to curry favor by doing business with Trump properties. A lot of that stuff was never fully investigated. A lot of questions were never answered. And if Bondi's DOJ is actively blocking investigations into Trump's family, then we're never going to get those answers. The stuff that should have been looked at years ago is just going to get buried forever. Now let's talk about the judges for a second, because this is actually really important. Federal judges are not happy with Bondi's Justice Department. The Newsweek article from October 20th says judges are accusing the DOJ of flouting court rulings and misleading tribunals. That's lawyers speak for the Justice Department, is ignoring what judges tell them to do and lying in court. And when judges start saying that publicly, it means things are really bad, because judges don't normally blast the Justice Department. They don't normally call out prosecutors for misconduct in the media. They handle that stuff through official channels and sanctions and contempt orders. So for judges to be so frustrated that they're going to reporters, that tells you how serious this is. And this creates a constitutional crisis in slow motion. Because what happens when the Justice Department stops following court orders? What happens when judges can't trust what DOJ lawyers are telling them? The whole legal system is based on trust and good faith. It's based on the assumption that the government's lawyers are being honest and following the rules. If that breaks down, then everything breaks down. Cases get thrown out, criminals go free, legitimate prosecutions fall apart, and public trust in the entire justice system collapses. Which brings us back to that poll I mentioned earlier, the Yahoo News poll from today showing Americans split 50-50 on whether the DOJ is serving justice or serving revenge. That's a disaster. That means half the country thinks every indictment coming out of the Justice Department is politically motivated, and the other half thinks everyone who's not being indicted is getting away with crimes because of political protection. Nobody trusts anything anymore, and that's exactly what happens when you politicize law enforcement. You destroy the legitimacy of the entire institution. And you know what's even crazier? This poll didn't just appear out of nowhere. It reflects years of erosion in public trust. We've been heading toward this cliff for a while now, and the Bondi situation is just a moment where we finally went over the edge. Because once you lose institutional trust, you can't just get it back with a press conference or a new policy. It takes decades to rebuild that kind of credibility, and every day that Bondi stays in her position, while these allegations swirl around her, makes it worse. Every leaked story from inside the DOJ makes it worse. Every judge that has to publicly call out the Justice Department makes it worse. Okay, so let's break this down into the core points, because there's a lot of noise around this story, and we need to cut through it and figure out what actually matters here. Like, what are the real consequences of all this chaos at the Justice Department? First point, and this is the big one, we're watching the independence of the Justice Department disappear in real time. And look, you can argue about whether it was ever truly independent or whether past administrations also politicized it, but the Trump Truth Social post removes any doubt about what's happening now. The president is directly pressuring the attorney general to prosecute specific people. That's not how it's supposed to work. The DOJ is supposed to follow evidence wherever it leads without regard to politics. But when the president is publicly, even if accidentally, ordering prosecutions, that system is broken. And here's why this matters beyond just immediate political drama. Once you establish that the president can control who gets prosecuted, every future president is going to do the same thing. Think about what happens when Democrats take back the White House eventually. They're going to look at what Trump did with the DOJ under Bondi and say, okay, our turn. They're going to go after Trump allies and Republican politicians and conservative activists with the same playbook. And Republican voters are going to be outraged and they're going to say this is tyranny, this is authoritarianism, but they won't have a leg to stand on because Trump already did it first. He set the precedent. He showed that it's acceptable to weaponize the Justice Department if you're in power. So yeah, this isn't just about Trump versus Democrats. This is about breaking a norm that's kept our justice system functional for decades. And once that norm is broken, it's not coming back. We're going to be stuck in this cycle where every administration uses the DOJ as a political weapon and nobody trusts anything anymore. And then what? What kind of country do we have when the Justice Department is just another partisan battleground, when half the country automatically assumes every prosecution is fake and the other half assumes every non-prosecution is a cover-up? Second point, the internal revolt at the Justice Department is a huge story that's not getting enough attention. When career prosecutors who've dedicated their lives to public service start leaking to the press about political interference that should set off alarm bells, these are people who normally keep their heads down and do their jobs regardless of who's in the White House. They're professionals. They're not partisan hacks. And if they're so disturbed by what they're seeing that they're willing to risk their careers to blow the whistle, then something is seriously wrong. And think about what happens to the Justice Department long term. If all the good people leave, if every experienced prosecutor who cares about doing things the right way decides this place is too corrupt to work at anymore, then who's left? You're left with loyalists and yes men and people who are just there for a paycheck. The institutional knowledge disappears. The commitment to justice disappears. And you end up with a completely compromised agency that can't function properly, even if a future administration tries to reform it. Like imagine being a young lawyer right now, trying to decide whether to work at the Justice Department. 5 years ago, that would have been a dream job, a chance to serve your country and work on important cases and be part of something bigger than yourself. But now you're looking at an organization in chaos where political considerations override legal ones, where career prosecutors are in open revolt, where federal judges don't trust what the department tells them. Who wants to start their career in that environment? So you're going to lose a whole generation of talented lawyers who would have gone into public service, but now they're going to go work at law firms instead. And that brain drain is going to hurt for years. Third point, the allegations about protecting Trump's family are potentially the most serious part of this whole thing, because if true, and again, we don't have confirmation yet, but if true, it means the Justice Department isn't just going after Trump's enemies. It's actively covering up potential crimes by Trump's family members. That would be obstruction of justice on a massive scale. That would be using the power of the Attorney General's office to put certain people above the law. And this goes back to something that's been an issue since Trump first ran for president. The conflicts of interest, the questions about his businesses and his kids' involvement in politics and foreign dealings. If Bondi is blocking investigations into any of that, then we'll never know the full truth. Evidence will be destroyed. Witnesses will disappear. Statutes of limitations will run out. And whatever wrongdoing may have happened will just be memory hole forever. And you know what the worst part is? Even if these allegations turn out to be false, the damage is already done because enough people believe it that it becomes part of the narrative. Half the country is going to assume Trump's family got special protection, whether there's proof or not. And that assumption is going to color how they see every other decision the Justice Department makes. It's going to reinforce the idea that we have a two-tier justice system where powerful people play by different rules. And once that belief takes hold, it's almost impossible to shake. Fourth point, and this ties everything together, trust in institutions is collapsing. That Yahoo News poll showing Americans split 50-50 on whether the DOJ is legitimate, that's catastrophic. Because the justice system only works if people believe in it. If half the country thinks every prosecution is fake and politically motivated, then you can't have a functioning society. People won't respect court orders. Juries won't convict based on evidence. Everything falls apart. And you're already seeing this play out, right? Trump supporters don't believe any charges against Trump are legitimate. They think it's all a witch hunt. Meanwhile, Trump critics don't believe any investigation into Democrats is legitimate. They think it's all revenge. So we've reached this point where nobody believes anything, and everybody just picks the narrative that fits their political tribe. That's not sustainable. You can't run a country like that. Think about what happens in 5 years or 10 years if we continue down this path. You'll have Republicans and Democrats living in completely separate realities, where they don't even agree on basic facts about what the Justice Department is doing or why, where every indictment is seen through a purely partisan lens, where the idea of blind justice becomes a joke that nobody takes seriously anymore. Is that the America we want? Because that's the America we're building right now, with every leaked story and every inflammatory Truth Social post and every judge that has to publicly question the DOJ's integrity. So where does this go from here? Honestly, it's hard to see a way out of this mess that doesn't involve more chaos. Because Pam Bondi is stuck between Trump's demands and the career prosecutors pushing back. The federal judges are losing patience. The leaks are getting worse, and the public is more divided than ever. Something's got to give. Maybe Bondi resigns. Maybe Trump fires her for not being aggressive enough. Maybe some big investigation blows up in a way that forces congressional hearings. Maybe we just limp along like this with a half-functional Justice Department until the next election. But whatever happens, the damage is already done. The precedent is set. The trust is gone. And that's going to have consequences for years to come. And look, I know some people watching this are thinking, good, burn it all down. The system was corrupt anyway. Let Trump clean house and go after the people who deserve it. And I get that impulse, I really do. But be careful what you wish for, because once you decide that political power means you can prosecute your enemies, then you're living in a very different country than the one you grew up in. You're living in a place where law doesn't matter anymore, where justice is just whatever the people in charge say it is. And history shows us pretty clearly how that story ends. It never ends well, because here's the thing about authoritarian systems. They always start with people saying we're just going after the corrupt ones. We're just holding the bad guys accountable. We're just restoring law and order. But then the definition of who's corrupt keeps expanding. Today it's Adam Schiff. Tomorrow it's anyone who criticized the president. Next week it's journalists who wrote unflattering stories. Next month it's judges who ruled against the administration. And before you know it, you're living in a country where speaking out against the government is effectively criminalized, because everybody knows the DOJ will come after you if you make too much noise. And yeah, I know that sounds dramatic. I know it sounds like I'm being hyperbolic, but this is literally how it happens. Not all at once, not with some dramatic coup, just slowly through 1,000 small decisions where political considerations override legal ones, where loyalty becomes more important than competence, where protecting the leader matters more than protecting the law. That's how democracies die, not with a bang, but with a whimper. So yeah, that's where we are. The Justice Department is in crisis. Pam Bondi's caught in the middle of a political firestorm. Trump's accidentally revealing how much pressure he's putting on her. Career prosecutors are in revolt. Federal judges are calling out the DOJ publicly, and half the country thinks this is justice, while the other half thinks it's revenge. This story is not going away anytime soon, and honestly, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, if it gets better at all, because we haven't even talked about what happens if there are more leaks. What happens if one of these career prosecutors decides to go fully public with what they're seeing? What happens if a whistleblower comes forward with documents showing direct coordination between the White House and specific prosecutions? What happens if one of Trump's family members actually gets indicted by a state prosecutor and we find out Bondi had been blocking the federal investigation into the same conduct? Any of those scenarios would blow this thing wide open in ways we can't even predict right now. Anyway, that's the breakdown. That's what's really happening behind the headlines. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you Team Bondi cleaning up corruption, or Team this is authoritarianism in action? Because I'm genuinely curious where people fall on this. And I'll catch you in the next one, where we're going to talk about what happens if this whole thing explodes even bigger. Because trust me, it can get worse. It can always get worse. Stay tuned.